We've got a deep video for you today because we're not afraid to talk about life struggles, even if it means telling pathetic stories about myself. I'm going to open up more and be more vulnerable to you guys because you've been opening up more to me. Even if I can help just one person and everybody else hates this video, it's worth it to me. Unfortunately, the topic today is all too common among the youth, and that's depression. Depression is a nasty, nasty thing that affects the youth more than any other age group. I've had my battles with it, and every time that it comes into your life, it's important to think deeply about it. How did you get there? How can you manage it? And most importantly, how can you overcome it? I'm not a doctor or a therapist, and I think it's important to seek professional help if you're really struggling with this. But today we'll discuss a personal story of mine about with depression in school. Before you click off the video, yeah, it was a long time ago, whatever. But this time period had a deep impact on me, and I think the lesson I learned has carried me through life today and stands true regardless of the phase of life you're in. Every time you overcome depression, you learn a little bit more about yourself and become a little bit stronger. I'll discuss the series of events that led me to this point, the feelings of it, and how the gym saved me and got my life back on track. Allow me to share one of my stories about my struggles. Let's get into it. First, let's talk about how I got into this situation. My circumstances going into high school combined with a series of unfortunate events and rejections destroyed my confidence in high school entirely. And unfortunately, I think Call of Duty and my love for video games is partially to blame for my first battle with depression. I think it's important when dealing with these things that you recognize how you got into that situation so that you have some clues on how to avoid it for the future. Some background. Before entering high school, I felt like I was doing very well. I got good grades, I had great friends, and life was good. I'd go to school and hang out with my buddies and then go home and play COD with them for 8 more hours, interrupted. I was living every 14-year-old's dream. But here's the problem. High school is not grade school. Going to school, going home, and playing video games all day for 8 hours may have worked for me in the past, but I quickly realized it wasn't going to work for me in the future. At this point in my life looking back, I was nothing short of a video game addict, as evident by my MW2 playing hours and mad zombie skills. Many of my friends started branching out in high school, joining sports teams, making friends, meeting girls, and putting themselves out there. I simply made no effort to meet new people, join any groups, or anything. I half-assed almost everything. I half-tried out for volleyball and basketball and got rejected as expected. I joined cross-country running for 1 week, only to quit because I couldn't even come close to running 2 miles. I really just didn't care. And honestly, was probably happy deep down since I'd have more time to drop nukes on MW2. Freshman year flew by, and for my social life I had nothing to show for it. Summer was more of the same that I had in grade school. Minecraft, Call of Duty, NBA 2K and Madden, and daily video game marathon sessions. And of course I was doing no physical activity and hardly going outside at all. I'd stay up late into the night, 3-4 in the morning, waking up past noon, missing half the day of sunshine altogether. I was eating every frozen pizza and Lunchables meal that I could get my hands on. I was coasting by, not really realizing the damage and lack of growth I was doing to myself in the process. Simply put, my video games playing was preventing me from going out there and experiencing the world. Video games can be great, but only if you're supplementing that with doing real things and living life. I would say my playing level was unhealthy. Sophomore year was when things took a turn for the worst. I realized that many people around me were growing up, making friends, meeting girls, and becoming important parts of their community, their sports team, or club. And then there was me, building Minecraft houses and improving my KD ratio in all my free time. With my morale declining and my parents on my back begging me to leave the house once in a while, I decided I needed to start trying, which is something I was not used to, especially with my social life. So step 1 to begin the year, get a date to homecoming. Since my school was an all-guys school, we were required to have a date of the opposite gender in order to attend the event. I had a buddy from my hometown who was well-adjusted. He had connections to others in the grade, and more importantly, he knew a girl. He said he needed an extra guy for his homecoming group, and all I had to do was ask one of his lady friends. So the plan was that I was going to go over to his house for a Skype video call where me and a friend were going to ask two girls to attend the dance with us as our dates. I arrived and we hopped on the Skype call where there were a pair of attractive ladies on the other end of the line. We engaged in some introductions and small talk to begin the call. The one that I was supposed to ask had a drastic change in mood shortly after we started talking, and a few minutes into it, the one I was supposed to ask actually stepped away from the camera and said that she, didn't feel that good. Many minutes passed and she never came back. Eventually, my friend just asked the other girl on the call to the homecoming, which she joyfully said yes. The other one was nowhere to be found. After the call closed, I asked my friend what happened, and he said he wasn't sure and that I should call them and ask, and he gave me her phone number. I called, no answer, and left a shaky, awkward voicemail asking her to be my date to the dance. After hours, she finally returned my call and reluctantly said yes, that she would go with me to the dance after I asked. She said yes almost certainly because she felt bad for me or because her friend pressured her into it. She agreed to go with a loser. A lot of self-doubt entered my thoughts and went through my head. What's wrong with me? I kept thinking. I went to the dance and barely even talked to my own date. I had no experience talking to girls and was probably the most awkward person in the state of Wisconsin that day. After all, we had nothing in common. She had no idea that an ACOG sight slightly increased weapon range or that the ray gun would shoot red when pack-a-punch. So what was there to talk about with her? The entire group I went with seemed to be having a blast and didn't make much of an effort to include me, and honestly, I didn't make much of an effort to be with them. I spent lots of time walking around the halls instead of on the dance floor. After one of the worst nights of my life at the time, I felt like a reject and a failure, and retreated to my basement that night yet again to play Call of Duty and escape from normal life. At least I was good at video games. It was truly a huge blow to my confidence. Being in situations where you hardly know people and have to make normal conversation was something I was truly terrible at. It's an important life skill that Call of Duty did not teach me. I had many failures in my social life shortly after this. I tried to join a few activities, track and field being one of them. Track, well, let's just say I was not an athlete. I was on the sprinting team, and I was so slow that my coach, in fact, would say to me, "Well, I learned if you ran any slower, you'd be running in reverse." For my sophomore year in track, they'd make you focus a little bit more on weightlifting. This was detrimental to me, because I was a very small and skinny kid. At least running didn't require much strength to do okay in, but weightlifting, I'd be completely exposed for my weakness. I was afraid of the weight room. One time I tried out a bench press, and I could barely bench press 65 pounds. That's nothing short of embarrassing for a man. For reference, like a small woman you find walking down the street could probably bench press more than that. So on designated weightlifting days, I would just say I was sick or find some school excuse to get out of it. Eventually I just decided to call it quits on track and field. I was just not that good and not close with any of the guys, just too embarrassed to be caught in the wave. The last extracurricular that I attempted was robotics, and this is just something I was not interested in, and was only doing it because my parents pressured me to. The fact that I did not care about it at all was obvious to the team around me and alienated me from them, and understandably so. I ended up dropping out of that very quickly as well. There was no one big point or big catastrophic event that made me feel this way. It was just a cumulative effect of all of it. Everything was getting to me. It seemed like any time I tried to push my comfort zone, it would backfire on me badly and show me how terrible I was. I reached one of the lower points in my life. I felt like I had no power to change things. Everything I tried failed. Many of my friends were moving on and had things they were doing, and I had no ladies texting my phone either. I was just not doing well mentally. I didn't really feel anything, just kind of emptiness, surviving day to day and not really enjoying my life at all. During this period of time, I was, as many would say, a depressed kid. I would often walk circles around in my basement of my house, just bumping Eminem and Linkin Park, just thinking too much, wondering how can I get out of this situation? Like, there's got to be more to life than this. I didn't even enjoy video games as much, as I partially blame them for my lack of... In his bad moments, he just needed to survive. I told myself I was going to transfer out of that school when the year was over, just to hit the reset button. I just needed to make it through. Schoolwork was my lone bright spot, because it was really the only thing I felt like I was good at, although it wasn't making me happy because I was just learning useless crap like the quadratic formula and the Pythagorean theorem. Without being good at school, I'm not sure what I would have done. It gave me at least a glimpse of hope that I'm good at something, and there was something to hold on to. In these moments, maybe try to hold on to the things you're good at, no matter how small, because maybe it can give you some momentum. When school was over, I needed this summer as a reset and to reevaluate everything. The beginning of the summer, after my sophomore year, began the same way it did when I was 13 or 14, daily video games. Except this time, I was 16, which is legal working age in my state, so my parents were nagging at me to get a job so I could make some money and get out of the house a little bit. So I got a job at the grocery store close to my house. Gave me something to go to, get moving, get out of the house, and talk to people. It was tough, repetitive work, but it was honest work. Of course, at the job, I couldn't help but notice there was a pretty lady working there as a cashier that caught my eye. I was 16 with literally zero riz, and I was forced to interact with her as part of my daily grocery bagging job. Young Wyler, so naive and with so much to learn, started to like her. Now, my version of flirting back then was making awkward small talk with hot cashiers and showing them how fast and efficiently I could bag groceries, which was a true talent of mine. One day at work, a few of the girls got on the topic of working out and weightlifting, and they mentioned how attractive it was when a guy's in good shape and when he's strong. My first feeling was, man, I am so screwed. I can barely lift the bar. I mean, I have virtually no chance of going on a date with any of these ladies. By the time I got home that night, it gave me an idea. There's a gym close by to my house, so why don't I just give it a shot and just not tell anybody? I mean, what do I have to lose at this point? And thus, my gym journey began. It was rough at first. I was super sore. I was embarrassingly weak. I tried to go at times when nobody would be there so nobody could see how weak I was. The first few times I was like, screw this. This is just too tough. Back to video games. But I noticed something. I simply felt better afterwards physically for the next few days. I decided to go once more. And then again. And then again. And then over time, I just fell in love with it. Eventually, I became a regular. It became an addiction almost. I was addicted to these gains. I was doing it more and more. I was doubled and then tripled my bench press, gaining pounds of muscle and just moving my body. Leg days, squats, curls, you name it, I was doing it. I was also started to make friends there and started going with friends, started playing basketball and screwing around there on Friday nights, and it was great. It revived my social life. By the end of the summer, I was in the best shape of my life, which isn't saying much, but it meant a lot to me at the time. And then full disclosure, at the end of the summer, I worked up the courage to ask that hot cashier out, and it was immediately friendzone, but it didn't matter. She served her purpose, and if those girls weren't talking about the gym at that moment, I'm not sure I would have ever tried going, so shout out to them. The gym was like a challenge, where improvement was very easy to see and measure. It gave me more purpose again. I had improved many of my lifts by over 100 pounds. If I can overcome these goals in the gym and these obstacles, what's to stop me from doing this in my life outside of the gym as well? Because of my newfound confidence, this trickled into other areas of my life. I was less afraid to go and try new things. It was my first taste of trying something new and succeeding. I proceeded to have a much better year, made new friends, got some dates that year, and participated more in school activities that I enjoyed. All thanks to this stupid old gym and the confidence it gave me. It gave me that little boost that I needed to get started on a more fulfilling path. Which leaves me with this very simple advice for the rest of my life. Every time I'm down in the dumps or just feeling directionless, I'm often overlooking one simple part of my life that makes a huge difference. And that's getting out there, moving your body, and giving yourself a very controlled challenge. The daily task of accomplishing something goes a long way, no matter how insignificant it may seem. Through this story, I learned a lot about the importance of challenging myself and keeping my body moving. This applies to me regardless of how old I am. Humans and our ancestors were meant to move around, hunt things, climb over hills, and be challenged. You need to take care of your body, physically and mentally. It's hard to have one without the other. If something in life is off, think to yourself, if you're neglecting the one vehicle you have in this life, then that's your body. Do whatever movement you can, see if it makes a difference. I'm not a doctor. This is just what I've found in my life.